Hey, what's up? This is Jeff from BKJmacTV, and this is episode 6 of my well-known podcast. We're building an audience, so please stay tuned. Today's episode is the focus on this documentary I was watching on PBS. It was about the passage of the 19th Amendment, women getting the right to vote. It was a 2-part documentary. Part 1 drew out the initial struggle, how Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Stanton, and African Americans, Ida B. Wells, came together trying to get Washington, D.C., trying to get the states to ratify passages where women could get the right to vote. Each time they were defeated. And by the time they were getting ready to pass the 15th Amendment, which basically, when the Radical Republicans were in charge of Congress, they allowed black men to vote. Frederick Douglass was pleased by this. White women like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton were upset. They were saying how it wasn't fair that former black slaves were enfranchised to vote, while white women like themselves, who were considered far more educated, had to remain on the sidelines. Frederick Douglass countered that let us go first, and that women will be able to get an opportunity down the line by helping you guys down the line. And honestly, the help didn't really come down the line. In fact, it created massive hostility that I didn't even know. You know, when it comes to racism and prejudice, it really reared its ugly head when it came to Susan B. Anthony taking on Frederick Douglass, basically trying to get the right to vote in the United States. Many white men, particularly Southern white men, did not want to see women enfranchised with the right to vote. They stated that if women had the right to vote, that means colored women, just like colored men, would be able to vote as well, and their reign on power would be suppressed. And that was a real fear for the Southern men. So when the Southerners were able to gain full control of the state legislators after the end of Reconstruction in 1877, they made sure they passed oppressive laws, which basically disenfranchised black men from voting in the South. So in a sense, black men were once again denied the right to vote because of these poll taxes and these literacy tests and stuff like that, which was wrong. So the documentary really exposes that part, and it really exposes the struggle. I think it was in 1893 in Atlanta. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton did not want Frederick Douglass to come and speak to the delegation because they feared that him speaking out would cause a low turnout and dissatisfaction with white women getting the right to vote. So he was pissed at that. And honestly, it was just a really rough episode. A lot of bitterness, tons and tons of bitterness. They were liberal white women that came on board. I forgot some of their names, but they came on board, and they were fighting for the right to vote. But Ida B. Wells, the civil rights activist, journalist that talked about and that published articles about lynching in the South of many black men and women at the hands of the KKK, said that she was going to continue to fight with women, to fight for the right to vote for all women, even if it meant fighting against the prejudice and the racism being directed towards her by Susan B. Anthony and company. She was going to still stand side by side with them to make sure she was able to gain the right to vote in all states. She continued to fight tirelessly. In the second part, you'll see Woodrow Wilson, who basically had mixed reviews about adding the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. he would say he didn't really want to see women have the right to vote as well. He was listening to his delegation that women should not have the right to vote. Meanwhile, other states like California had ratified in their state constitution for women to have the right to vote. At that point, 11 states in the United States gave women the right to vote. But in a lot of states, women still were denied the right to vote. And eventually, the pressure turned up. Even in a close election in New York in 1916, women's amendment to gain the right to vote failed, and it was so wrong. They were crushed. They were emotionally crushed. Some of the old heads that was like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Catton had died off because eventually they didn't get a chance to vote in every state election, because of the prejudice on gender. Eventually, Elizabeth Stanton's daughter took over the movement and continued in her footsteps to basically lead the movement. Ada B. Wells continued to lead the movement as well. And many women came together to just really push and pushed. In fact, there was a coalition of women that literally stayed in front of the White House every single day, from spring to summer to fall and to winter. They were outside the White House camping out to get Woodrow Wilson's attention, and basically in getting him to try to urge Congress to pass the 19th Amendment in the Constitution. It's an amazing story. You guys gotta watch this. The American Experience. You'll really see the struggle, what women had to go through in order to just get the right to vote in the United States. Voting should not be taken for granted in this country. I mean, I go out and I vote in every single election as humanly possible. No one should take that privilege in such a disregard. So many people worked so hard. So many people worked so hard to get us the right to vote. And for women particularly that were disenfranchised for so long, and they had to fight, camp out many seasons just to be able to convince lawmakers to just acknowledge them and get them the right to vote. Even after it passed the Congress by barely a simple vote, they had to go through every state constitution. Each state had to ratify it. And there was a major contention battle. I think it was in Oklahoma. And there's a big story behind that. And basically, let's just say women were able to come up on top of that. So again, don't take people who are voting out there, women who want to vote in elections this upcoming year, the midterm elections, which is going to be big for our country, but there's so many things that's on the ballot. Raising the minimum wage nationally, creating opportunity transition programs from college to executive positions. There's so many things. Expansion of healthcare, bridges, tunnels, more grand resources. There's so many things, and we're not holding our government officials responsible because we're not voting. We're not taking advantage of the vote that was given to us, that our ancestors had to work hard, tooth and nail just to get for us. So we gotta vote. Voting is important. The midterm elections are coming up in November, and we, as the people, we got to vote. Men, women of all gender, of all race. We have to vote. It is important. It is essential. It is our constitutional right. It is our birthright as peoples of this country. We have to vote because too many people in past generations gave their lives, gave their blood, sweat, and tears to ensure that we have now the ability to vote every time in elections. So please watch the documentary, and please, after watching it, rate it, tell me what you think, and then also vote. Take a moment and thank the women before you, the men before you that got us an opportunity, that fought to make sure women, men of color had the right to vote in this country. Whatever means they took, the vote was able to occur. So again, please vote in the midterm elections. Don't sit home. When people sat home, when voters sat home in 2016, the other voters elected Donald Trump. What happened? He appointed 3 conservative judges because those voters voted for Trump. We could have easily made sure the election went to Hillary. So we can't afford to sit home in the midterm elections. We got to help Joe out in the White House. Joe Biden need our help, and we must help out Joe. Simple as that. We must complete his message by voting. Again, please watch a documentary on PBS, The American Experience, about women and the struggle for the passage of the 19th Amendment. And please, don't take voting as a joke. Take it as an opportunity and a birthright to exercise your rights in this country called America. Thank you for listening to this wonderful podcast. You guys have been great listeners. Again, peace, love, always one.